What is up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Fantasy Fellow Show. Hope you're all doing well. My name is Kyle. Today it is Monday, July 22nd. We're going to be continuing my 32-team projection series. We've covered 5 of the 8 divisions, and today we're starting the NFC South. So I'm hoping to knock these out over the next couple days. We're starting with the Atlanta Falcons in this one, and if you guys are new to the process here, what I do is I do a 2023 review where we just look at what happened last year and what maybe went wrong or went right. And then we look at each position for 2024, quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, and tight ends. And I kind of open up my projections and show you guys what we're looking at. And then if you guys are new to the Fantasy Fellowship, check out thefantasyfellowship.com. I am running a $10 membership where you guys can get access to all my rankings, my dynasty content. There's articles, a lot of stats, and a lot of projections and documents and things for you guys to look at. So if you're interested in any of that stuff, there's also a Discord link. Check out thefantasyfellowship.com. But without further ado, we're going to hop into a screen share here. And let's talk about these 2023 Atlanta Falcons. It was the final year of the Arthur Smith, Dave Ragone era, and it wasn't great. The quarterbacks that they've been dealing with the last 3 years under Arthur Smith, we're talking Desmond Ridder, Taylor Heineke, Marcus Mariota, Desmond Ridder, and Matt Ryan, and a little bit of Josh Rosen, I guess you could say. So it hasn't been pretty. The quarterback play has been very, very weak. It's been a very good running team, but they regressed last year in the running column. They did throw the ball a lot more, though, under Desmond Ridder. Mariota was the guy in 2021, and he ran the ball a lot. And last year we saw Desmond Ridder actually sit back and throw the ball along with Taylor Heineke. So 530 passing attempts last year, just under 62% completion percentage, about 3,800 yards, 17 touchdowns to 17 interceptions. So that's a pretty bad ratio, down significantly from their 2022 one where they had 17 touchdowns to 9 interceptions. And then they ran the ball a lot, 522 times last year, down from 559 the year before. But yards per carry went down significantly to 4.14, and rushing touchdowns came down to just 14. So, adding a talent like Bijan Robinson and these numbers to come down, a bit maddening. You did get, Marcus Mariota inflating those numbers a little bit in 2022. So that could be a part of it, but they just weren't as successful as they could have been last year. Pretty much every facet of the game. Bijan Robinson still played well, 4.56 yards per carry on 214 carries, but Arthur Smith just couldn't stop giving Tyler Algier the ball. 106 rushing attempts and just 3.67 yards per carry. For him to have the same amount of rushing touchdowns as Bijan is kind of a crime. So that's, I think, what ultimately one of the reasons that got Arthur Smith killed. He just had these awesome personnel and didn't use it correctly. He hasn't been using Kyle Pitts or Drake London as well as he could have been either. But to his credit, he hasn't been working with a lot at the quarterback position. So that's all going to change. For the 2023 review, for them to go 7-10 3 straight years, it was pretty clear Smith had to go. I don't know how much we can learn from the last 3 seasons. We can look at Bijan's numbers last year, and then, they have Pitts in London, and we like their underlying data. But I think projecting the 2024 Falcons, it really doesn't matter all too much what happened last year. So we're going to just move right into the 2024 numbers. And let's start, because, you got some interesting change at the top. You have Raheem Morris and Zach Robinson coming in here as the offensive coordinator. And if you guys are unfamiliar with Zach Robinson, he's from a nice coaching tree that should have us excited for this offense. He's spent the last few years in LA. He was with the Rams his whole coaching career since 2019 as an assistant QB coach, a wide receiver coach, a quarterbacks coach, and then the passing game coordinator / quarterbacks coach, now upgraded to offensive coordinator. So only 37 years old, part of the Sean McVay tree, probably going to see a lot of 3 wide receiver sets out of this year's Falcons, and hopefully deploy, these awesome physical assets in a much better way than we saw Arthur Smith do. So I'm expecting a more pass-heavy group. You got Kirk Cousins here at quarterback, so we'll talk about the quarterback here. Kirk Cousins I have leading the way at 555 passing attempts. That's I have them at 580 total passing attempts, so that's more than any time in the Arthur Smith era. I also have them having the highest completion percentage over the last 3 years as well, at about 67.57%. Kirk Cousins, the last few seasons, has been really solid in that department. Let me pull up his numbers real quick here. His completion percentage the last few seasons, 69.5, 65.9, 66, 67.6, 69, 70. He's been pretty dang good throwing the ball. So I have him at a high percentage here, about 4,155 yards, 26 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. And we know he doesn't add a lot on the ground. And coming off that Achilles tear, I don't expect him to move a lot. He might actually be sacked quite a bit because of it. But 25 total rushing yards and a fumble. I think Kirk Cousins is fine for fantasy. He's just, he's getting up there in age. And now that he already had no threat to run the ball, and anything that he could have done now, it's just not happening. And for fantasy football, you do want that upside of a rushing quarterback. So purely looking at his passing numbers, he's going to be one of the best passers in the league. But for fantasy, he doesn't add anything in the running game to make him a difference. So he could be a top 15, top 12 quarterback by the end of the season. I have Kirk Cousins in my projections as my RB or my QB 22. So, super flex leagues, he's on the radar because I think he's going to be consistent and steady. He'll throw for, 250 some passing yards and a touchdown or two per game. So I think he's a steady guy, but for fantasy football, he's just not a guy that I'm super excited to get on my team. He's honestly more of like a QB 2-3 for super flex this year. And I think we could see Bijan Robinson end up getting a lot of rushing touchdowns near the goal line. But Kirk Cousins was dealing last year. He was having a great year, 18.7 points per game. And you can see over these last, almost 10 years, 16 to 18 points per game. I think you're looking for something similar out of Kirk Cousins this year. So I do like Kirk Cousins. I'm not taking him in a one QB league, though. He's going to be probably a waiver wire QB. But for super flex leagues, you can grab him as your 2 or your 3 and see how it goes. Michael Penix obviously is the guy they drafted, and if anything happens to Kirk Cousins, we should still be excited about this offense with Michael Penix. We might get more Bijan rushing the ball. I think the receivers might not take a big hit either. London and Kyle Pitts, you might have more inefficiency with the passing completion percentage, but Penix can deliver some big time throws. So I have him basically starting a game at the end of the year. The Falcons are all in on 2024 and 2025. They're going to play Kirk as much as they can. And as long as he's healthy, he's going to be out there. If things go really bad, say they're 4-10 at the end of the year, maybe they give Michael Penix a shot and see what he can do. But for now, we're not drafting him in anything but a dynasty league. So that's it for the QBs, though. We'll move on to the running backs. And I'm pretty excited about the running back. This year, I have Bijan Robinson as my running back 1. We'll look at those numbers in a sec. But, man, this frustrating usage last year of Tyler Algier. I mean, we had a whopping 400 carries to the running back last year between the top 2 running backs, and it was basically a 50-50 split, maybe a 51, 52-48 split, something like that. But Bijan looked great. He looked great despite the boneheaded coachingness of Arthur Smith here. So I have Bijan. And we got Zach Robinson, and you come from the Rams where they love to use a bow cow back, and they've already been talking about using Bijan as a Christian McCaffrey type player. I fully expect Bijan to get as much as he can handle this year. I have him at 295 rushing attempts, 1,355 rushing yards, 9 rushing touchdowns, which feels a little low to me. I do have him being involved as a receiver as well, 72 catches, 90 targets, 495 yards and 2 touchdowns. I think this is the year we finally see Tyler Algier kind of push down into more of a true backup role. So with all that being said, Bijan Robinson's one of my favorite first-round picks. Again, I have him as my RB1 this year over Brees, over CMC. I think this is the guy that we're looking for. Actually, if I filter by PPR real quick, I do have CMC as my RB1. So Bijan is my RB2. But I feel I honestly, where you can get Bijan, CMC is going to cost the 101 or the 102. Sometimes you can get Bijan at 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in that range. And if I'm looking at the guys in that range, I like the receivers there, but I'm going to take Bijan Robinson a lot in that range of players. So continue to take Bijan Robinson. He's set up for a huge year. And with the gimpy Kirk Cousins, maybe they lean on Bijan heavy early in the year. I do have Tyler Algier at number 2, 95 total carries, 365 yards, 2 touchdowns, and just a little bit of work in the receiving game. I'm curious to see who wins the RB3 battle between Jace McClellan out of Alabama and Avery Williams, who they liked. I think he got hurt last year. They like him as a change of pace back. But, if we're talking about McClellan or Avery Williams, that either means Bijan got hurt or maybe Algier got hurt. So probably nothing to note there. I think it's pretty clear Bijan and Algier, your top 2 backs. So draft Bijan. I don't need to tell you to draft Bijan. He's going to be one of the best players in fantasy football this year. And I like the Falcons schedule quite a bit. But we'll move on to the wide receiver room here, and that is Drake London, Darnell Mooney, Rondale Moore, Ray McLeod, Kadero Hodge, and Casey Washington. Now, the Falcons, they didn't have a lot to throw to last year. Outside of Drake London, the receivers were Matt Collins, Kadero Hodge, Scott Miller, Van Jefferson, Demir Bird. Ugly. And they've at least upgraded the position here with Darnell Mooney, who I think is a fine number 2, number 3 receiver, and then Rondale Moore in kind of a gadget role is a nice add as a number 3. So I think it's very clearly London, Mooney, Moore as your top 3 guys in 3 wide receiver sets. And we're looking at Drake London potentially having a career year. It's his 3rd season in the league. Last year, 905 yards, 2 touchdowns. The year before that, 866 and 4 touchdowns. I mean, I think he's going well over that yardage. I think he had 72 catches his rookie year, 69 last year. He should be able to smash that. And then 117 targets his rookie year. He should be able to smash that. So I'm projecting year 3 career highs in receptions, targets, yards, and touchdowns for Drake London. At 98 receptions, 140 targets, 1,245 yards, and 8 touchdowns. Like, right now in best ball leagues, he's being drafted as like a fringe first rounder, early second round pick. I think he does have top 5 receiver upside at the position this year, but the safest way to play Drake London is to just say, yep, he is my top 10 receiver this year. And man, if you can get him as your wide receiver too, that's where it feels like a really good positional value. If you started your draft with, whether you had maybe Breece Hall at running back or Jahmyr Gibbs, you could easily just tuck Drake London away at the wide receiver 1 spot in round 2. Or, you could really grab like A.J. Brown and Drake London. I've seen drafts where it's Garrett Wilson, Drake London. You can get a really nice combination with London as your wide receiver too, and that's what I like to grab London as. At wide receiver 3 or 2, I have Darnell Mooney, who last year he kind of got lost in the Chicago shuffle, but he's still a really good player. We don't have to look back too far to see when he was lighting up the boards and having a lot of yards and a lot of big plays for Chicago. I have him number 2 in targets at 85, 48 total catches, 675 yards, and 4 touchdowns. If we just look at the depth chart real quick here for the Falcons, I mean, I think this was a good get for the Falcons. They didn't have a guy that they could trust to stretch the field, and Mooney's going to come in and do that. Year 2 for Mooney, he had 81 catches, 1,055 yards. Just not so much the last couple years, but even if we get what he did in 2020 as a rookie, almost 100 targets, 60-some catches, a little over 600 yards and 4 touchdowns. I think you're probably not going to get 2021 numbers, but probably in between his rookie year and his sophomore breakout year, I think is doable. So for best ball, I've been drafting a lot of Darnell Mooney. I don't know if we're ever going to feel comfortable starting him in a redraft league, but I do think you can grab him at the end of your bench and see what happens. Because, Kirk Cousins is, last year, you think about what he was able to do with JJ, and then TJ Hawkinson, and then Jordan Addison. Like, Darnell Mooney can do a Jordan Addison impression and maybe finish as a top 50 receiver. So that's kind of what I'm comparing him to, a poor man's Jordan Addison. And then Rondale Moore, man. Rondale Moore had he's had trouble staying healthy, but he did play a full 17 games last year. And he's just like a rotational piece here. He did have 40 catches, 352 yards, and a touchdown as a receiver, but he's a runner. He's kind of like a poor man's Curtis Samuel, if you will, where he's going to get a lot of work running the ball, but he's going to be in that 40 to 50 catch range territory where any given game he could pop off for 7-8 quick catches. I do have him at 64 targets, 42 receptions, 435 yards, and 3 touchdowns, and then getting a decent amount of work as a ball carrier. So purely a best ball guy. I don't think we're going to need him on our redraft rosters unless Mooney or London were to get hurt. But he's still a good prospect. He's not a star, but he is a good role player and can help the Atlanta Falcons do some fun things. And then, Ray McLeod, Kadero Hodge, Casey Washington, we don't really need to talk about those guys. If we are talking about them, something went wrong for the Atlanta Falcons in 2024. But we'll kind of finish up here and let's look and see. I do have Drake London as my wide receiver 9. So I mentioned, again, he's a really safe top 10 receiver play. I do think if you get him as your wide receiver 2, that's where it looks really good. And then if I scroll on farther down to find Darnell Mooney, I mean, he's my wide receiver 67, so I'm a little bit low on his numbers, but it wouldn't surprise me if he has, a Rashid Shaheed type season where he blows up for a lot of big plays and finds himself, spiking a lot of weeks with some 15 to 20 point games. And then Rondale Moore down here at wide receiver 73. So just a guy that I think will pop off every now and then, not a guy you need to worry about too much. But let's finish here with the tight end position. We're talking Kyle Pitts, Charlie Warner, and John Fitzpatrick. Kyle Pitts put together some nice things last year, but man, like they had 160 targets to the tight end position, and Pitts only got 90 of them. So he could have had a much bigger year. Still hasn't been catching a lot of touchdowns as a pro. 53 catches, 667 yards last year, and 3 touchdowns the year before that, which got hurt. We're going to kind of just throw that one out. But we can't forget about his rookie season where he caught 1,026 yards. He caught 68 catches on 110 targets. I think you're looking at a similar spike as what he had as a rookie, probably more catches, more targets than he did as a rookie. And then I think we're finally going to see the touchdown column spill positively for Pitts. I have him at 78 catches, which is second on the team, 120 targets, which is second on the team, and then 1,020 yards. So his second career 1,000-yard season, 6 touchdowns. I think he's a play at a top 5 position. And, there's an outside chance where if he runs hot on touchdowns and, he's a mismatch for a lot of people in the middle of the field, he could really finish as the tight end 1. So I totally love taking shots on Kyle Pitts. We don't need to talk about Charlie Warner, John Fitzpatrick. I'm glad Jonnu Smith's gone. There's not a decent number 2 option where I think if they're throwing the ball, it's all Kyle Pitts at tight end. And they have mentioned moving him around, the formation at receiver positions and tight end positions and things like that. So I'm hoping this is finally, Zach Robinson, can you finally unlock Kyle Pitts? And if you think about, the Rams' history with tight end the last few years, a lot of it Tyler Higbee, some of it Gerald Everett, they've done some really nice things throwing the ball to the tight end. So I think we're going to get the best of Kyle Pitts in 2024. And I do have Kyle Pitts as my tight end number 6. But again, he's kind of in this cluster, man. I have the tight end 1 at 250 points. I have Pitts at 216. Like I said, if he catches a few more touchdowns and a few more other things break right, I think tight end 1's up for grabs this year by about 6 to 8 tight ends. So I'm drafting Kyle Pitts. I think if you miss out on Drake London, Bijan, you want to look for Kyle Pitts in that 6th, 7th round. So we'll finish up with the final thoughts here on the Falcons. I'm nervous about Kirk Cousins, man, coming off the Achilles, but for fantasy, he didn't run the ball anyway, so it's not going to affect his running numbers, if at all. And the health of his Achilles is going to be interesting to keep an eye on because, if he gets, if he can't move and he can't, evade sacks and things like that, that's going to hurt this team. So I think that's another reason why they grabbed Michael Penix, just to make sure they have someone that they can groom while Kirk is healthy. And if things do happen where they have to throw Penix out there, they're giving themselves a chance to, to continue to be a good offensive team. So I like Penix quite a bit. I think he's a great dynasty stash. And then again, Kirk Cousins, more of a QB2 for me in Superflex leagues. But it's very simple. It's Bijan, London, and Pitts. I think you want one of those pieces this year. I like starting my draft with Bijan if you can get him. Otherwise, London's a nice consolation round 2. And if you miss on both those guys, really consider Kyle Pitts. He's a 6th, 7th round cost right now in 2024 redraft leagues. And I think the best is yet to come, and we're going to see it this year. So I like the Falcons. I think they're probably the front runner to win the NFC South this year. We'll see if Tampa Bay can hold on. But the Falcons, man, they've done a lot. And just getting Raheem Morris now to lead the defense, you have a bright young mind to lead the offense. I think we could see some really nice things in Atlanta this year. So thank you so much for your time, guys, and hanging out with me watching the video. If you guys want to check out I'm going to post it in the comments, but the link to the playlist for all the other teams that I've covered. And thank you so much for your time. We'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.